I stood in the driveway of the home I built with my late husband, watching movers load my furniture into a truck. My son, Tyler, would not meet my eyes while his wife, Amber, smirked from the porch. The house I paid off, the business I grew from nothing, the savings account I filled for 30 years, all gone. Amber had convinced Tyler to make her co-owner of everything, then systematically pushed me out. Now, at 65, I clutched a single suitcase and wondered how I would survive. The motel room smelled like stale cigarettes and cleaning chemicals. I sat on the sagging mattress, counting my remaining cash for the third time. $212. That would cover another week at this extended stay place on the edge of town, where police sirens wailed through the night and arguments echoed through paper-thin walls. My name is Sue. 3 years ago, I had everything. A beautiful home in the suburbs, a thriving medical supply company I had built from scratch over 30 years, a comfortable retirement fund, and most importantly, my son. Then my husband Gerald died suddenly from a heart attack. He left everything to Tyler and me jointly, trusting we would take care of each other. 2 years ago, Tyler married Amber. The wedding was beautiful. She wore white lace and called me Mom, wrapping her arms around me during the mother-son dance. She asked me questions about running the business, seemed genuinely interested in learning from my experience. I thought I had gained a daughter. I was so wrong. It started subtly. Little comments Amber would make to Tyler when she thought I could not hear. She doesn't trust you to run things. She treats you like a child, not a partner. She is getting older. Maybe she is not as sharp as she used to be. Tyler began questioning my decisions at work. Why did you approve that vendor? Are you sure about these numbers? Maybe we should get a second opinion. Then Amber asked to become chief financial officer, to learn the family business from the inside. I agreed, wanting to keep peace, wanting to believe we were building something together. That was my first mistake. Within 6 months, Amber had convinced Tyler to make her joint owner of both the house and the business. She presented it as a way to protect family assets, to ensure continuity. I signed the papers during a busy week when I was exhausted, trusting my son, trusting his wife. That was my second mistake. The rest happened quickly. Amber started manufacturing financial emergencies. She claimed I was mismanaging funds, presented Tyler with records showing money missing from accounts. The records were falsified, but I did not know that then. I just knew my son was looking at me with suspicion, with pity, as if I were losing my mind. Tyler, convinced his mother was slipping due to age, sat me down one evening. Mom, we need to talk about your role in the company. Amber showed me some concerning patterns. Maybe it is time to step back, enjoy retirement. Let us handle things. I tried to defend myself, but Amber had lawyers ready. Papers to sign, agreements about transitioning leadership. I was confused, overwhelmed, and I signed. I signed away my own business, my own rights, because my son asked me to, and I wanted to trust him. 3 weeks later, they asked me to move out of the house. Amber needed space for the nursery. She was planning to get pregnant soon. The house was too much for one person anyway. Would not I be happier in a smaller place? I had nowhere to go. No business income, no home, and my savings account, which Amber now had access to as co-owner, had mysteriously dwindled. When I questioned it, Amber showed Tyler more falsified records, proving I had been withdrawing cash, spending recklessly. So I ended up here, in a motel that charged by the week, watching my life savings disappear dollar by dollar. I tried to find work, but at 65, no one wanted to hire me. Too old for retail. Overqualified for entry-level positions. Lacking recent, relevant experience for management roles. I filled out application after application, heard nothing back. Finally, desperate, and down to my last $300, I sold my jewelry at a pawn shop. My wedding ring, the pearl necklace my mother left me, the diamond earrings Gerald gave me on our 25th anniversary. $800. I cried the whole drive back to the motel. That is when I signed up to drive for Uber. My 12-year-old sedan still ran, barely. I could pick up passengers, make enough to cover rent and food. It was humiliating, but it was survival. The first week was brutal. Long hours, rude passengers, navigating neighborhoods I would have been afraid to drive through in daylight, let alone at 3 in the morning. I learned which bars closed when, which nightclubs paid the best fares, which street corners to avoid. Then came my first Monday morning airport run. 6 a.m. pickup from a mansion in Northbrook Hills, the wealthy area on the north side of town where houses sat behind iron gates and manicured lawns stretched for acres. The passenger was Arthur Harrison, distinguished man in his 80s, silver hair perfectly combed, wearing an expensive suit. He greeted me politely, placed his leather briefcase carefully in the back seat, and settled in for the 40-minute drive to the airport. We made pleasant small talk. He was flying to Chicago for board meetings. He asked how long I had been driving. I gave vague answers, not wanting to share my situation. He tipped me $50 at the airport. $50 for a 40-minute drive. The next Monday, same routine. Arthur Harrison, 6 a.m. pickup, airport run. He remembered my name, asked how my week had been. We talked about the weather, about Chicago, about nothing important. Another $50 tip. This became our pattern. Every Monday morning for 8 weeks, I drove Arthur to the airport. He flew to Chicago for business meetings, returned Thursday, and always requested me as his driver for the Monday trip. Over those weeks, we developed a rapport. He asked about my life, and I shared carefully edited versions. I told him I was widowed, told him I used to run a small business, but I did not mention losing everything. Arthur shared pieces of his story, too. He had built a pharmaceutical company from nothing, spent 40 years growing it into something significant. Now mostly retired, he kept active on the board, traveled for meetings. He spoke fondly of his late daughter, Margaret, who had died 20 years ago. His voice always softened when he mentioned her. On the 8th Monday, Arthur noticed my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. I had not eaten since the previous afternoon, trying to stretch my food budget. Low blood sugar made my vision blur slightly. We arrived at his mansion, and instead of immediately getting in the car, Arthur asked his housekeeper to bring coffee and pastries. He handed me a large cup of coffee and a bag filled with croissants and muffins. "Eat something before we go," he said gently. "The meetings can wait 10 minutes. I almost cried at that small kindness. Someone seeing me, caring whether I had eaten breakfast. That kindness from a near stranger when my own son had abandoned me. But my world was about to crumble further. After dropping Arthur at the airport that Monday, I returned to the motel to find an eviction notice taped to my door. I was 3 days late on rent. My car had needed an emergency repair the previous week, $200 I could not avoid spending. Now, I had 24 hours to pay $260, or the manager would clear out my room. I sat on the bed and counted my money. $112. Not enough, not even close. My phone buzzed with an email notification. It was forwarded from a friend, someone I used to work with before Amber took everything. The email contained a link to social media posts from Amber's page. Photos of a beautifully decorated nursery, pale blue walls with white clouds painted carefully around the ceiling. Tyler stood beside Amber, his hand on her belly. The caption read, "So blessed with my amazing husband. Cannot wait to be parents to our baby boy. Due in March. A boy." I was having a grandson. A grandson I would never meet. The comments below were full of congratulations from people I knew, people who used to be my friends. "What a wonderful couple. That baby is so lucky. You two will be amazing parents." I had been erased from my own son's life. Tomorrow, I might be homeless. And Tyler was about to become a father, creating a family I was not part of. I lay back on the motel bed and stared at the water-stained ceiling, wondering how much lower I could fall. Sunday night, I worked frantically. I took every ride request that came through, drove all evening and through the night. Bar pickups, late-night grocery runs, airport drops at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. I skipped meals. I skipped breaks. My eyes burned with exhaustion, but I kept driving. By 5 in the morning Monday, I had made $170. Enough to pay the motel with a few dollars left over. Enough to buy a couple more days. I pulled into a gas station, splashed water on my face in the bathroom, and headed to Northbrook Hills for my 6 a.m. pickup. Arthur Harrison was flying to Chicago, same as every Monday. I could not afford to be late, could not afford to look as desperate as I felt. Arthur answered the door himself that morning. His housekeeper usually met me, but today it was just him. He took one look at my face, and his expression shifted to concern. "Are you all right, Sue?" "I am fine," I lied, trying to smile. We got in the car. I focused on driving, on keeping my hands steady on the wheel, on not crying. But halfway to the airport, Arthur spoke quietly. "Sue, what is troubling you?" Something in his voice, the genuine concern, broke through my defenses. And suddenly, I was telling him everything. The words poured out. How Amber had manipulated Tyler. How I had lost my home, my business, my savings. How Tyler now believed his mother was either senile or criminal. How I had been driving all night to avoid eviction. How there was a grandson coming, a little boy I would never know. I cried while I drove, tears streaming down my face, barely able to see the road. Arthur listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked gentle questions. How long had I known Amber? What exactly had she told Tyler? What proof did she have? At the airport, instead of immediately getting out, Arthur sat in the back seat for several extra minutes. Then he began to speak. "Sue, I had a daughter, Margaret. She died 20 years ago in a car accident. She was 42 years old." His voice was thick with emotion. "When Margaret was a teenager, I went through a bitter divorce from her mother. My ex-wife poisoned Margaret against me, told her lies, made her believe I was the villain. Margaret refused to see me for years. We finally reconciled when she was in her 30s, had some good years together, but we lost so much time I can never get back." He paused, and I heard him take a shaky breath. "You remind me of her, Sue. That same strength, that same dignity, even when the world is cruel. Margaret had that spirit too. She built her own accounting firm from nothing, fought her way through a male-dominated field, never gave up. And I almost lost her forever because someone turned her against me." I wiped my eyes, pulled over to the curb outside the terminal. Arthur opened the car door, then turned back to me. He pulled out a checkbook, wrote carefully, tore out the check, and handed it to me. I looked down. $20,000. "Mr. Harrison, I cannot. Pride is expensive, Sue. Let me help someone I wish I could have helped better. My daughter needed support during those years we were estranged, and I was not there. Let me do for you what I could not do for Margaret." I tried to give it back, but he closed my hand around the check. "Promise me you will cash this, find stable housing, take care of yourself. You have worth, Sue. Your son cannot see it right now, but that does not make it any less true." I was crying too hard to speak. I just nodded. "Same time next Monday," he said, his voice warm. "I will see you then, Sue." He walked into the terminal, and I sat in my car sobbing with relief, with gratitude, with the overwhelming kindness of a stranger who saw me when my own son refused to. That week, everything changed. I paid the motel 2 months in advance. I bought groceries, real food, not just ramen noodles and crackers. I got my car properly repaired, new tires, an oil change, fixing things I had been ignoring. I opened a small savings account and deposited most of the money, creating a buffer against disaster. I found a studio apartment I could afford, a tiny place, but clean and safe, in a better neighborhood. I planned to move in 2 weeks. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. I continued driving Uber, but without the desperate panic. I chose my hours, took breaks, treated myself to coffee occasionally. The weight on my chest lightened just slightly. Friday afternoon, I was driving a passenger across town when my phone rang. Tyler. The first time he had called in 3 months. My heart pounded. Maybe something had changed. Maybe he was calling to apologize, to reconcile. I pulled over and answered. Mom? His voice was cold, distant. Tyler? Hi. How are you? How is Amber? I heard about the baby. Congratulations. He cut me off. The house caught fire last night. The nursery is destroyed. Oh my God. Are you both okay? Is Amber hurt? Is the baby? We are fine, but Amber says you did this. She says you have been driving past the house at night, harassing us. She saw your car. What? Tyler, I have not been anywhere near your house. I would never. The fire inspector says it was electrical, but Amber swears she saw your car multiple times. She is filing for a restraining order. Stay away from us, Mom. I mean it. If you come near our property, I am calling the police. Tyler, please listen. I have been working every night. I can show you my Uber records. I was not there. I would never hurt you, or Amber, or... He hung up. I sat in my parked car, stunned. Not only had I lost my son, now I was being accused of arson, of trying to hurt my own grandchild. The legal notice arrived Saturday morning. Temporary restraining order. I was required to stay 500 feet away from Tyler and Amber, from their residence, from Amber's workplace. Violation could result in arrest. I held the papers with shaking hands. This could not be happening. I had done nothing wrong, but I was being treated like a criminal. I could not afford a lawyer. Arthur's $20,000 was earmarked for rent, food, survival. Legal fees would drain it in weeks, leave me back where I started. I spent the weekend terrified, jumping at every sound, certain the police would show up to arrest me for something I had not done. I wanted to tell Arthur, to ask for advice, but I had no way to contact him except Monday morning, and I did not want to burden him further. He had already been so generous. Monday morning came. I drove to Northbrook Hills at 5:45, pulled up to Arthur's mansion at exactly 6 a.m. The housekeeper, Mrs. Campbell, answered the door. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. My stomach dropped. Mrs. Campbell, is everything all right? Is Mr. Harrison okay? She started crying harder, could barely speak. Oh, Sue, I am so sorry. I am so terribly sorry. Mr. Harrison passed away Thursday evening. Heart attack on the plane coming home from Chicago. He never even made it back to the ground. The world spun. I gripped the doorframe to keep from falling. What? He spoke so highly of you, dear. Just this past week he told me you reminded him of his Margaret. He said you had the same spirit. He was so glad to have met you. I could not process it. Arthur was gone. The one person who had shown me kindness, who had seen my worth, who had saved me from homelessness. Gone. Mrs. Campbell invited me in for coffee. We sat in Arthur's beautiful kitchen and cried together. She had worked for him for 30 years, loved him like family. The funeral was Wednesday, she said quietly. Private, family only, but she gave me the details anyway. She knew Arthur would have wanted me there. I drove back to my motel room in a daze. Arthur Harrison, who had been a stranger 9 weeks ago, had become my only friend, and now he was dead. I could not afford to take time off work, could not afford to grieve. But that night, alone in my room, I sobbed for the grandfather I had never known I had, for the kindness that had been so briefly in my life. Wednesday came. I could not attend the funeral. I had not been officially invited and did not want to intrude. I spent the day driving, trying to keep my mind occupied, trying not to think about Arthur being lowered into the ground while I shuttled strangers to restaurants and shopping malls. Thursday, I had the restraining order hearing. I stood before a judge and listened to Amber testify. She wore a flowing maternity dress, her hand constantly touching her belly, playing the vulnerable pregnant woman. She claimed she had seen my car driving slowly past their house multiple times. Late at night, after 11 p.m., she submitted security camera footage, grainy and blurry, showing a sedan that could have been mine or could have been 1,000 other cars. I presented my Uber driving logs, showing I had been across town on those nights, picking up passengers miles away. Time-stamped, GPS verified. The judge looked skeptical of both of us. He extended the temporary restraining order for 30 days, scheduled a full hearing to determine if it should become permanent. I sat in the courtroom, Tyler beside Amber, and he would not look at me. His own mother, and he could not even meet my eyes. After the hearing, I lingered in the hallway, hoping Tyler might speak to me. Instead, I overheard Amber whispering to a friend near the water fountain. Once we get the permanent order, she cannot claim grandparent rights to the baby. That is the whole point. Keep her legally away, establish a pattern. Then when the baby comes, she has no case. My blood ran cold. This was not about the fire. This was about making sure I could never be part of my grandson's life. Friday afternoon, I returned from driving to find a man waiting outside my motel room. Expensive suit, leather briefcase, the bearing of someone important. Sue? Sue Jennings? Yes? I am Lawrence Hendricks, senior partner at Hendricks & Shaw. I was Arthur Harrison's attorney. May I speak with you? My mind raced. What could Arthur's lawyer possibly want with me? We walked to the diner across the street. I could not have this conversation in my dingy motel room. We sat in a booth, ordered coffee, and Lawrence opened his briefcase. Mrs. Sue, I am here regarding Mr. Harrison's estate. He updated his will 2 days before his death. You are named as a beneficiary. I was confused. Arthur had been generous enough already. I only knew him 9 weeks. I was just his Uber driver. I am sure it is just a small thank you. That is very kind, but he already helped me so much. Lawrence looked at me intently. Mrs. Sue, Arthur left you $220 million. I must have misheard. I am sorry. Did you say 20,000? No, $220 million. Roughly 38% of his liquid assets. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. That is not possible. There must be a mistake. Lawrence pulled out documents, showed me the will, showed me the numbers. Arthur Harrison's estate was worth over $580 million. It was being split between various recipients. His research foundation received the largest portion, various charities, his household staff, distant cousins who had never visited him, and me, $220 million to a woman who had driven him to the airport 9 times. I do not understand. Why would he do this? He left you a letter. I am required to read it to you. Lawrence pulled out an envelope, opened it carefully, and began to read in Arthur's words. Dear Sue, if you are hearing this, I am gone. I hope my passing was quick, and that Mrs. Campbell is taking care of the details. She is wonderful that way. I need you to understand why I have done this. I have been blessed with tremendous financial success, more money than one person could ever need. But I have also suffered tremendous loss. My daughter Margaret was my whole world, and when she died, I lost my only direct heir. I have distant cousins I have met, perhaps twice in my life. They never called, never visited, never cared whether I was alive or dead until they learned I was wealthy. I owe them nothing. But you, Sue, you reminded me so powerfully of Margaret, not just in appearance, though there was something familiar in your eyes, but in spirit, in dignity, in the way you maintained your kindness, even after losing everything. I watched you over these weeks. I saw how hard you worked, how you never complained, how you treated every passenger with courtesy, even when you were exhausted. I saw how you kept going even when you had every reason to give up. Margaret had that same spirit. She built her own accounting firm from nothing, fought through a world that did not believe women belonged in business. She maintained her integrity even when it cost her. I could not give Margaret more time. I could not undo the years we lost to my ex-wife's manipulation, but I can do this. I can ensure that someone with Margaret's spirit, someone who deserves security and freedom, has the resources to live without fear. This money represents what I wish I could have given Margaret. More support, more help when she needed it, more tangible proof that her father saw her worth. You do not owe me anything for this, Sue. You already gave me something valuable. You gave me Monday mornings. You gave me conversation and kindness, and reminded me why I loved my daughter so much. I know this will not replace your son. It will not bring you your grandson. But it will give you options, freedom, the ability to help others the way you would have if your daughter-in-law had not stolen from you. Use it well, Sue. Live without fear. And maybe, occasionally, think of a Monday morning stranger who saw your worth when no one else did. With great respect and affection, Arthur. By the time Lawrence finished reading, I was sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. Arthur had seen me, really seen me. He had recognized my worth when my own son could not. Lawrence handed me tissues, waited patiently while I composed myself. There will be legal proceedings, of course. Estate settlements take time. But Arthur's will is very clear, and he was of sound mind when he made these changes. You will receive this inheritance, Mrs. Sue. It is what Arthur wanted. I wiped my eyes, tried to process what this meant. All I could think was, Arthur died, believing I was just a stranger he wanted to help. He never knew the truth. He never knew he was helping his own granddaughter, because I did not know it either, not yet. The news hit the local paper within days. Arthur Harrison's estate settlement required public legal notices, and journalists loved a good story. Local Uber driver inherits fortune from pharmaceutical magnate. The article painted me as either incredibly lucky or questionable, depending on which paragraph you read. My phone started ringing. Old acquaintances I had not heard from in years suddenly wanted to reconnect. Former employees from my medical supply company, people who had not called when I lost everything, now curious about my good fortune. Some were genuine, most were not. Then Tyler called. Mom, we need to talk. Hope flared in my chest. Maybe the news had opened his eyes. Maybe he finally understood that Arthur had seen something in me, that I was not the villain Amber painted me to be. Can we meet for lunch? I agreed immediately. We met at a restaurant downtown. Tyler arrived with Amber. My hope dimmed when I saw her, but I tried to stay optimistic. Tyler seemed uncomfortable, would not quite meet my eyes. Amber did all the talking. Sue, we have been so wrong. The fire, the stress of the pregnancy. I was not thinking clearly. We want you in our lives, in the baby's life. Her voice was sweet, dripping with false warmth. Really? You mean it? Of course. Family is everything. We should all move past this ugliness. What matters is moving forward together. I started crying with relief. Finally, my son was coming back to me. I reached across the table, hugged Tyler. He hugged back stiffly, but it was something. Then Amber continued. So, about this inheritance. Obviously, that old man was not in his right mind. 9 weeks of car rides, and he leaves you $220 million? It looks bad, Sue. It looks like elder abuse, like financial manipulation. My relief turned to ice. What are you talking about? Tyler finally spoke, looking ashamed but backing his wife. Mom, you have to see how this looks. You befriend a lonely old man, get him to change his will right before he dies. We have consulted with an attorney. The estate should be contested. I stared at my son, unable to believe what I was hearing. Arthur changed his will because he was kind, because he recognized in me. Amber cut me off. Because you manipulated him. Our lawyer says this could be prosecuted as elder exploitation. You could face criminal charges. But if you voluntarily give up the inheritance, agree it is not rightfully yours, we can make this all go away. The restraining order, everything. We will be a family again. I stood up from the table. You do not care about me. You want the money. Amber dropped the sweet act, her face hardening. You do not deserve it. You are nobody. You drove an old man to the airport 9 times and conned him into leaving you a fortune. We are your family. That money should come to us, to your grandson. Tyler, I said, my voice shaking. Do you really believe this? He would not look at me. Mom, just give up the inheritance. Then we can all move on. I grabbed my purse. I will not give up what Arthur wanted me to have. He knew exactly what he was doing. Tyler's voice turned cold. Then we will take it from you. I walked out of the restaurant, my hands shaking so hard I could barely unlock my car. That was Friday. By Monday, the lawsuits began. Tyler and Amber filed to contest the will, claiming I had manipulated Arthur through undue influence. But there was more. Amber filed a separate lawsuit claiming my inheritance was community property because, she alleged, I had stolen trade secrets from the family medical supply business, which directly benefited Arthur Harrison's pharmaceutical company. Therefore, the inheritance was proceeds from theft. The claim was insane, completely fabricated, but legally complicated enough to require expensive defense. Even worse, 6 distant relatives of Arthur, cousins who had never visited him while he was alive, joined the contest. They claimed the inheritance should go to blood family, not to a stranger who had known Arthur for only 9 weeks. Lawrence Hendricks called me into his office, his expression grave. "Mrs. Sue, this just became a multi-party lawsuit. Multiple plaintiffs, complex claims. This could take years to resolve and cost millions in legal fees. They are trying to bleed you dry before you even receive $1 of the inheritance." I sat in his office, understanding the strategy. Even if I won, I would lose. The legal battle would consume the inheritance, leave me with nothing but attorney bills and more years of poverty. Amber had found a way to take everything from me again. But Lawrence was not finished. "However, I think we should fight this. I believe in what Arthur wanted. My firm will take this case, and much of it will be pro bono. We do not let people destroy a decent man's final wishes just out of greed." So began the longest, most brutal months of my life. Depositions where hostile lawyers grilled me for hours. They painted me as a calculating predator who had targeted a vulnerable elderly man. They asked about every conversation I had with Arthur, twisted innocent words into sinister motives. Amber testified that I had always talked about rich people, that I was obsessed with money, that I had abandoned the family business out of greed. All lies. Tyler testified, clearly coached by expensive attorneys, claiming I had changed after Gerald died, that I became paranoid and erratic, that he had to take control of the business to protect it from my poor decisions. I sat in a conference room and watched my son commit perjury to steal from me. The media attention intensified. Some journalists portrayed me sympathetically, a widow trying to rebuild her life. Others suggested I was a gold digger who preyed on a grieving old man. My face was in newspapers, on local news broadcasts, dissected by strangers who knew nothing about my life. My legal fees mounted, despite Lawrence's generosity. Depositions required expert witnesses, document reviews, investigative costs. My small buffer of money from Arthur's original gift dwindled. But Lawrence had hired someone, a private investigator named Diane Porter, former FBI forensic accountant, and Diane started digging. She called me 3 weeks into the investigation. "Sue, I need you to tell me everything you know about Amber. Her full name, where she is from, anything you remember." I told her what little I knew. Amber Jean Caldwell, from somewhere in the Midwest, worked in medical device sales before marrying Tyler. Diane was quiet for a moment. "Did Tyler know Amber was married before?" "What?" "Amber was married at 23. Marriage lasted 8 months, then annulled. Previous husband filed fraud charges, later dropped, claiming Amber forged his signature on loan documents." My blood went cold. "Tyler does not know. I am certain." Diane kept digging. Into the medical supply company finances, into the months when Amber served as CFO. She found irregularities. Equipment orders that were never delivered. Vendor payments to companies that did not exist. Money flowing out of the company into shell corporations. Diane traced those shell companies back to bank accounts in Amber's maiden name. "Sue, Amber embezzled approximately $340,000 over 18 months. She covered her tracks by making it look like you were taking the money. The falsified records she showed Tyler were partially real. Money was missing, but she blamed you for her own theft." I could barely breathe. "Can you prove it?" Diane's voice was confident. "I can prove it. Bank records, shell company filings, timestamps. It is all there. Amber systematically stole from your business, then framed you to cover her crime. But Diane was not finished investigating. She looked into the house fire. The fire inspector's report showed an electrical fire starting in the wall behind the nursery. Amber had claimed she saw my car that night, used it as proof of harassment. Diane obtained security camera footage from a neighbor's house. The timestamp and angle covered the entire street. No cars on the street the night of the fire. None. Amber had lied about seeing my car. More damaging. Footage from the week before the fire showed Amber in the nursery with a contractor, pointing at the wall. Diane tracked down the contractor. He was nervous, did not want trouble, but eventually admitted the truth. Amber had asked him to update some wiring in the nursery. Paid him cash under the table. No permit, no inspection. He did the work quickly, cutting corners to keep the price down. The shoddy electrical work caused the fire. Amber deliberately hired an unlicensed contractor to save money, then blamed me for the fire when her own negligence nearly destroyed the nursery. Sue, Diane said carefully. Amber committed insurance fraud and attempted to frame you for arson. This is serious criminal activity. I felt vindicated and horrified at once. Vindicated because I finally had proof. Horrified because this woman was carrying my grandson and she was a criminal. The night before a crucial hearing, where the judge would decide if the case proceeded to full trial or got dismissed, Diane called me at midnight. Sue, I found something. I have been researching Arthur Harrison's daughter, Margaret. Why? Just humor me. Look at this photo. She sent an image to my phone. Margaret Harrison at age 25, standing outside a small medical office building. I enlarged the photo, studied her face. My heart stopped. That is my mother. Diane's voice was gentle. Keep looking. Another photo. Margaret holding a baby girl. A note written on the back. Margaret and baby Sarah, 1960. Sarah was my mother's name. My mother, who I had thought was Sarah Jennings, daughter of Robert, and Sarah Jennings Sr., my grandparents. Diane sent more documents. Birth records. Adoption papers. Margaret Harrison gave birth out of wedlock in 1960. The father was not listed. Margaret's parents, Arthur and his then-wife Constance, forced her to give the baby up for adoption to avoid scandal. The baby was adopted by a couple named Robert and Sarah Jennings, who I had always believed were my biological grandparents. Margaret kept this secret her whole life. Arthur never knew where his grandchild went. Constance had handled the adoption through lawyers, sealed all the records. After Margaret died, Arthur tried to find the child, his only grandchild, but the records were sealed, and he could not break through the legal barriers. My mother, Sarah, died when I was 32 years old. She never told me I was adopted. I had lived my entire life believing the Jennings were my biological family. Sue, Diane said softly, Arthur Harrison was your biological grandfather. He did not know for certain, but I think he suspected. The dates lined up, your age, your mother's name being Sarah, the way you looked. I think that is why he left you the money. He was leaving it to his own blood family. I sat on my couch in my tiny apartment, phone pressed to my ear, unable to process what I was hearing. I never knew I had a grandfather. My mother never told me. And Arthur died, never knowing for certain that I was his granddaughter. Lawrence joined the conference call, his voice excited despite the late hour. Sue, this changes everything. You are not an outsider who manipulated Arthur. You are his granddaughter, his only direct descendant. The inheritance is not generosity to a stranger. It is a grandfather providing for his grandchild. Every lawsuit against you collapses with this evidence. But all I could think was, Arthur died alone, wondering if I was Margaret's granddaughter, but never knowing for sure. I spent 9 Mondays with my own grandfather and never knew who he was. I cried for the relationship we could have had, for the time we lost, for the family connection neither of us knew existed. The emergency hearing happened fast. Lawrence filed motions with the new evidence, requested immediate judicial review. I sat in the courtroom, watching Tyler and Amber's lawyers scramble. They had not expected this. None of them had. Lawrence presented DNA evidence. Sue's DNA compared to Arthur Harrison's from his medical records. Conclusive proof of grandfather-granddaughter relationship. Historical adoption records. Margaret's birth records. The sealed files that Diane had somehow obtained through legal channels. The judge reviewed everything carefully, asked questions, examined the documents. Tyler sat beside Amber, his face pale with shock. Amber looked furious, cornered. The judge spoke. This court finds clear and convincing evidence that Sue Jennings is the biological granddaughter of Arthur Harrison. The inheritance in question is not a gift to a stranger, but a grandfather's desire to provide for his only direct descendant. All claims of undue influence are dismissed. All claims by distant relatives are dismissed, as they lack standing against a direct heir. The will stands as written. Amber tried to stand up, to object, but her lawyer pulled her back down. Tyler just stared at me across the courtroom. Outside in the hallway after the ruling, Tyler approached me. Amber tried to pull him away, but he shook her off roughly. "You were his granddaughter?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "I did not know until 3 days ago. My mother never told me I was adopted. Arthur and we never knew we were family. Everything Amber said about you, I believed her. I turned against my own mother." Tyler's face crumpled. Amber grabbed his arm. "Tyler, let us go. She is just manipulating you again, playing the victim." Lawrence stepped forward, holding a folder. "Mrs. Amber, I think you should know we are turning over evidence to the district attorney. Embezzlement of $340,000 from the family business. Insurance fraud related to the house fire. Perjury during the restraining order hearing. That is 15 to 20 years in prison." Amber went white. "Tyler, I can explain." "They are lying." Lawrence handed Tyler the folder. "Your wife stole $340,000 from your family business over 18 months. She framed your mother for the theft. She hired an unlicensed contractor who caused the fire, then committed insurance fraud and tried to blame Sue. She perjured herself in court. It is all documented. Bank records, shell company filings, contractor testimony, security footage." Tyler opened the folder, started reading. His hands shook. His face went from pale to red to pale again. "You lied about everything. You stole from my mother. You made me turn against her. You used our baby." Amber tried one last manipulation. "Think about the baby, Tyler. Your son needs his mother. You cannot do this to him." Tyler looked at her with disgust. "My son needs to be raised by people with integrity. I am filing for divorce. You can work out custody with lawyers." Amber's face twisted with rage. "You will regret this. I will take you for everything. I will make sure you never see your son. I will destroy you the way you let her destroy me." Security guards escorted her out as she screamed threats. Tyler turned to me, tears streaming down his face. "Mom, I do not know how to say this. I do not know if you can ever forgive me. You are my son. You made mistakes, but you are still my son." He hugged me, and we both cried in that courthouse hallway. The weeks that followed were complicated. Tyler and I did not suddenly have a perfect relationship. You cannot undo months of betrayal with one conversation. But we started talking. Really talking. He told me how Amber had systematically isolated him. How she had made him question his own perceptions, his own memories. How she had convinced him that protecting her meant protecting his future, his family, his child. Classic manipulation. I knew that now. But Tyler had been vulnerable, grieving his father, wanting to believe in his new marriage. We started meeting for coffee once a week. Awkward at first, both of us careful with our words. But gradually, we found our way back to each other. The legal proceedings against Amber moved forward. She pleaded guilty to embezzlement and insurance fraud in exchange for a reduced sentence. 3 years in prison, restitution to be paid from any assets she had, which was almost nothing, since she had spent most of what she stole. Tyler filed for divorce and for full custody. Given Amber's criminal conviction and impending incarceration, custody was granted to Tyler with supervised visitation for Amber once she was released. The baby was born in March. A healthy boy, 8 pounds 3 ounces, with Tyler's dark hair and, I hoped, better judgment than his parents. Tyler named him Arthur Gerald, after my grandfather and my husband, after the two men who had shaped our family, one I had known and one I had only briefly met. I held baby Arthur for the first time in the hospital, this tiny person who had been the center of so much pain and manipulation. He was innocent in all of this, just a baby who deserved better than the war that had been fought around him. Tyler watched me with his son. "I am sorry does not cover it, Mom. I failed you. You came back. That is what matters. We cannot undo the past, but we can build a better future. I want Arthur to know his grandmother, really know you, to understand what strength looks like. And I want him to know his father learned what matters. That takes real courage, Tyler. Admitting you were wrong, choosing what is right, even when it is hard. That is the legacy I want for Arthur." The inheritance became official. $220 million transferred to accounts in my name, an amount of money I could barely comprehend. I did not buy a mansion. I bought a comfortable 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood. 1 bedroom for me, 1 for Tyler to use when he needed help with the baby, 1 for Arthur when he was old enough to stay over. I set up a foundation in Arthur and Margaret's names, the Harrison Foundation for Second Chances. We helped people who had lost everything start over. Single mothers facing eviction, seniors who could not afford medical care, people who just needed someone to believe in them. The first person we helped was a single mother from my old motel. She had 2 kids, worked 3 jobs, was about to be evicted because her car broke down and she missed work. We paid her rent for 6 months, fixed her car, and helped her find better employment. Last I heard, she was thriving. Helping others helped me heal. Every person we assisted was someone Arthur would have wanted to help, someone Margaret would have recognized as deserving. Tyler and I grew closer. He brought baby Arthur over 3 times a week. We had dinner together. We talked about Gerald, about the business we had lost, about how to raise Arthur with values that mattered. I still drove Uber occasionally, not because I needed the money, but because I liked meeting people, hearing their stories. It reminded me where I had been, how far I had come. One Monday morning, exactly 1 year after Arthur's death, I drove to the cemetery. I brought flowers, white roses, his favorite. I stood at his grave with baby Arthur in my arms. "Thank you, Grandpa, for seeing me, for believing in me, for making sure I would have the chance to show Tyler what really matters. I promise I will make you proud." I placed the flowers on his grave, told Arthur stories about his great-grandson, about how Tyler was learning to be a father, about how we were rebuilding what had been broken. "And I will make sure your great-grandson knows about you, about Margaret, about the kind of man who could recognize family even when he did not know for certain. That is the legacy that matters." Today, 18 months after Arthur's death, I sit in my comfortable living room watching Tyler play with Arthur on the floor. My grandson is learning to walk, taking wobbly steps between his father's outstretched hands and the coffee table. The foundation has helped over 200 families now. We have expanded to 3 cities, hired a staff of people who understand what it means to lose everything and need a second chance. I reconnected with some of my old employees from the medical supply business. We started a new venture together, smaller than before but ethical and strong. This time, I know exactly who to trust. Tyler completed a year of therapy. He needed to understand how he had been manipulated, how to recognize the warning signs, how to protect himself and Arthur from future harm. He is a better man for it, more careful, more thoughtful, more willing to question his own assumptions. Amber was released from prison 2 months ago after serving her sentence. She has supervised visitation with Arthur once a month. Tyler is civil but firm. Arthur's well-being comes first, always. I learned that I was stronger than I ever imagined, that losing everything can teach you what truly matters, that dignity cannot be stolen, only surrendered. And I refused to surrender mine. People sometimes ask me if I am angry at Tyler for what he did, for believing Amber, for turning against me, for making me lose my home and business and nearly my life. The truth is complicated. Yes, I was angry. I spent months furious at the injustice, at the betrayal. But anger is exhausting. And Tyler came back. He admitted he was wrong. He chose truth over comfort. That takes courage. I also learned that family is not just blood. Arthur was my grandfather by blood, but he became my family by choice, by showing up every Monday morning, by seeing my worth when no one else did, by leaving me not just money, but proof that goodness is recognized, that integrity matters. I think about Arthur often, about how he lost so much time with Margaret because of manipulation and lies, about how he spent his final years alone, except for Monday mornings, with a stranger who turned out to be his granddaughter. I think about the letter he left me, about how he saw Margaret's spirit in me, about how he wanted to give me what he could not give her: security, freedom, options. I learned that greed destroys. It destroyed Amber. It nearly destroyed Tyler. It takes good people and turns them into hollow versions of themselves, chasing money instead of meaning. But love and truth rebuild what greed tears down. Slowly, carefully, painfully. But they rebuild. I look at baby Arthur taking his uncertain steps, and I think about the lessons I want to teach him. That integrity matters more than wealth. That kindness is strength, not weakness. That family means showing up, even when it is hard. That second chances are real, but you have to be brave enough to take them. Tyler looks up at me from the floor, smiles. A real smile, the first genuine one I have seen from him in years. Thanks for being here, Mom. Thanks for not giving up on me. You are my son. I will always be here. Sometimes the universe sends you exactly what you need, even if it comes disguised as Monday morning stranger. Arthur gave me more than money. He gave me proof that my life had value, that I was worth seeing, that the woman I had been for 65 years, the woman who worked hard and loved deeply and refused to become bitter, that woman mattered. And that is a gift beyond measure. I drive past my old house sometimes, the one Amber and Tyler took from me. New people live there now. The nursery has been rebuilt. Life continues. I do not feel sad when I see it. I feel grateful. Grateful that losing everything taught me what I could survive. Grateful that hitting rock bottom showed me who I really was. Grateful that the worst moment of my life led to finding my grandfather, even if only for 9 brief Mondays. Baby Arthur toddles over to me, grabs my leg for support. I pick him up, hold him close. Your great-grandfather Arthur would have loved you. He would have been so proud of your daddy for choosing what is right. And he would have wanted you to know that family is not about perfection. It is about showing up, about trying again, about recognizing worth in others even when the world tells you to look away. Tyler stands up, joins us on the couch. Tell me more about him, Mom. About Arthur. About those Monday mornings. So I tell him. About the dignified man who always tipped well. About the coffee and pastries when he noticed I was hungry. About the $20,000 check and the words that came with it. Pride is expensive. About the final gift that proved a stranger saw more in me than my own son did, at least for a while. And I tell him about grace, about how we are all capable of being manipulated, of making terrible choices, of hurting the people we love. But we are also capable of coming back, of admitting wrong, of rebuilding. That is the story I want Arthur to know. Not the fairy tale version where everything works out easily. The real version where people fail and struggle and sometimes succeed. Where grandmothers drive Uber to survive, and grandfathers leave fortunes to strangers who turn out to be family. Where sons make terrible mistakes but find their way back. Because that is the truth about second chances. They are messy and complicated and hard-won, but they are real. And sometimes If you are very lucky, the universe sends you a Monday morning that changes everything. I have learned so much from this journey. What about you? Have you ever experienced a moment when a stranger's kindness changed your life? Or a time when you had to forgive someone who hurt you deeply? I would love to hear your story in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please consider liking this video. It helps others who might need to hear this message find it. And if you believe in second chances and the power of resilience, please subscribe to this channel. We share stories of real people, overcoming real struggles, and your support means we can keep sharing these important messages. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. Someone who is struggling. Someone who has lost everything and wonders if they can rebuild. Someone who needs to know that dignity cannot be stolen and that kindness still exists in this world. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this community. I wish you strength in your struggles, grace in your conflicts, and the courage to keep choosing what is right even when it costs you everything. Remember, you are worth more than your worst moment. You are worth more than what others say about you. You are worth the fight to rebuild. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other.